What if a single, impulsive act of defiance by two innocent children shattered the carefully constructed facade of a powerful CEO, forcing him to confront a past he thought long buried and a truth that could destroy everything he held dear? Could a man, who believed himself incapable of love, truly be a father? Daddy! Clara and Elisa Hayes, identical 7-year-old twins, shouted in unison, their small voices echoing through the opulent ballroom as they ran towards the stage where Richard Sterling, CEO of Sterling Corporation, had just finished his inaugural speech. The hushed murmurs of the distinguished guests, a glittering assembly of Chicago's elite, abruptly ceased, replaced by a stunned, palpable silence. Richard froze mid-sentence, the microphone slipping slightly in his trembling hand, as he watched the two little girls in their matching white dresses and blue ribbons ascend the stage, their innocent faces beaming with a desperate, hopeful joy. "Daddy, we finally found you," Clara exclaimed, her small arms reaching out to him. "We've been looking for you for such a long time," Elisa added, tears welling in her bright green eyes. The television cameras, initially focused on Richard's triumphant speech, now swiveled like hungry sharks, their lenses zooming in on the unbelievable, scandalous scene. Camera flashes erupted, a relentless barrage of blinding light. Richard looked out at the sea of shocked, curious faces and found the eyes of Isabel Morales, his ex-wife, standing rigidly by a marble column, observing the unfolding drama with a complex mixture of raw terror and an unnerving, steely determination. What is the meaning of this? Cecilia Sterling, Richard's older sister and a formidable presence on the company's board, hissed, rushing towards the stage, her face a mask of disbelief and mounting fury. Richard grabbed the microphone, his hand shaking uncontrollably. This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, his voice amplified, echoing throughout the suddenly silent ballroom. "I don't know who these children are. Mr. Sterling, are they your daughters?" A journalist shouted from the audience, his voice sharp, insistent. "I don't have any children." Richard raised his voice, a desperate edge to his tone. "It's medically impossible. I'm infertile." Isabel felt the floor tilt beneath her feet, the world spinning around her. Clara and Elisa looked at Richard, their small faces etched with a heartbreaking confusion. "But," Clara tried to speak, but a security guard was already approaching them, his expression grim. "Don't touch them." Isabel suddenly appeared on stage, a fierce, protective lioness defending her cubs. "They are my daughters." The ballroom erupted in a fresh wave of shocked murmurs. The cameras now focused on Isabel, a woman in her early 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in a plain black suit that starkly contrasted with the glittering elegance of the other guests. "And you are?" a reporter demanded, thrusting a microphone towards her. "Isabel Morales," she responded, her voice clear, unwavering, as she took her daughter's small hands in hers. "And he," she pointed a trembling finger at Richard, "knows exactly who I am." Richard stared at her, and for a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, something flickered in his eyes, a flash of recognition, a ghost of a memory, before it was instantly extinguished, replaced by his usual cold, impenetrable mask. "I've never seen this woman before in my life," he lied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Liar!" A new voice, young and defiant, cut through the tense silence. Gabriel Morales, Isabel's 15-year-old nephew, appeared beside her on stage. "Uncle, stop pretending." "Uncle." Cecilia paled, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. "Who is this boy?" "I'm Gabriel Morales, Clara and Elisa's cousin," the young man stated, his gaze fixed on Richard. "And he pointed directly at the powerful CEO, "is their father, whether he wants to deny it or not." Security guards began to surround the small, defiant family. The event director rushed onto the stage, desperately trying to control the escalating situation. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, please." "No!" Clara broke free from her mother's hand. "I want to talk to my daddy." She approached Richard, who instinctively recoiled. "We know you," the little girl said, her voice surprisingly firm. "We have pictures of you. Mommy told us everything. This is a circus," Cecilia hissed in Richard's ear. "We need to get them out of here immediately." "Pictures?" a journalist shouted, sensing a major scoop. "What kind of pictures?" Isabel clenched her fists, her knuckles white. The moment she had dreaded for years, the confrontation she had meticulously tried to avoid, had finally, spectacularly, arrived. But it wasn't happening in the way she had ever planned, or ever imagined. "Richard," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, sharp and clear. "Look at them. Look them in the eyes and tell me you see nothing familiar." He forced himself to look at the twins. Clara had his same piercing green eyes. Elisa the exact same stubborn set of his chin. The resemblance was undeniable, almost painful. It's impossible," he stammered, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Richard," Cecilia nudged him sharply. "Don't say another word." "Daddy." Elisa approached him timidly, her small hand reaching out. "Why don't you recognize us? Mommy says we look a lot like you." The entire ballroom held its breath. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every agonizing, humiliating second. Richard looked at his distinguished guests, at the powerful executives of his company, at the high society that had watched him grow, that had lauded his success. His meticulously crafted reputation, his entire life was unraveling spectacularly in real time. "This ends here," he declared, his voice a hoarse, desperate command, as he gestured towards the approaching security guards. "Get these people out of this event. Now!" "We're not people. We're your daughters," Clara screamed, her voice filled with a raw, heartbreaking desperation that tore at Isabel's soul. The guards moved closer, but Gabriel, with a surprising agility, stepped in front of them. "One moment," he shouted, his voice ringing with youthful defiance. "I have proof." He pulled out his phone and held the screen up towards the flashing cameras. "This is a photo of Richard Sterling with my Aunt Isabel, 8 years ago. I found it on her old social media accounts." The flash of cameras intensified, a blinding, merciless onslaught. Richard felt the world tilt, his carefully constructed facade finally, irrevocably shattering. "That photo," he whispered, his voice barely audible. For the first time, his mask of cold, unshakable control cracked, revealing a flicker of something raw, something real, something terrified. Isabel looked him directly in the eyes, her own gaze unwavering. "Now you recognize me, don't you, Richard?" What happens when a carefully guarded secret explodes into a public scandal, forcing a mother to confront the painful memories of a love betrayed and a son to grapple with a truth that shatters his world? Could the echoes of the past hold the key to an uncertain future? Isabel closed her eyes, and for a fleeting, poignant moment, she was transported back to that small, sun-drenched coffee shop in Greenwich Village, 8 long years ago. Richard Sterling was 25 then, his dark hair perpetually disheveled by the New York City wind. His smile so devastatingly charming it made her forget everything else, including the vast, unbridgeable chasm between their worlds. "What are you thinking about, Mommy?" Clara's small voice pulled her abruptly from her reverie. They were in a taxi, speeding away from the glittering lights and hushed whispers of the Sterling Corporation gala, back to their modest, unassuming life. Gabriel sat in the front seat, his phone still buzzing with notifications, the videos of the dramatic event already circulating like wildfire across every social media platform. "I'm thinking about when I first met your daddy," Isabel replied, gently stroking Elisa's hair, who had fallen asleep on her lap, exhausted by the emotional turmoil. "Was he handsome?" Clara asked, her innocent eyes wide with a child's insatiable curiosity. "Very," Isabel smiled sadly, a ghost of a memory flickering in her eyes. "And very different from the man you saw today." Gabriel turned from the front seat, his young face a mixture of concern and a newfound, protective anger. "Aunt Isabel, there are already 1,000 videos on TikTok. We're famous." "That wasn't the idea, Gabriel," she murmured, her voice weary. The truth was, She had never planned for things to happen this way, so publicly, so chaotically. For months, Clara and Elisa had been asking about their father, their innocent questions growing more specific, more insistent, with each passing day. At first, Isabel had told them he was a good man who lived very far away. But children, with their uncanny intuition, knew when something was amiss. One day, Gabriel, Isabel's perceptive, tech-savvy nephew, had found the twins crying because their classmates had mercilessly teased them for not having a dad. That very same day, the determined teenager decided to take matters into his own hands. "Aunt Isabel, show me pictures of him," Gabriel had demanded 3 months prior. Reluctantly, Isabel had shown him the few faded photographs she still kept hidden away, precious relics of a love she thought long dead. Gabriel, an expert in the labyrinthine world of social media like any teenager, began his relentless investigation. "I found him!" he had shouted one afternoon, bursting into their small living room, his eyes wide with excitement. "His name is Richard Sterling, and he's super rich." From that moment on, everything had spiraled out of control. Gabriel had shown the twins videos of Richard at corporate events, glitzy interviews on television, glossy photographs in high society magazines. The little girls became obsessed. "Why doesn't he live with us if he's our daddy?" Elisa would ask constantly, her innocent question a fresh stab to Isabel's already wounded heart. Isabel didn't know how to explain that Richard never even knew of their existence, that when she had tried, desperately, to contact him after their birth, she had been met with a wall of icy secretaries who hung up on her and emails that were never, ever answered. The taxi pulled up in front of their modest apartment building in a quiet, working-class neighborhood of Queens, a world away from the glittering skyscrapers where Richard Sterling conducted his powerful, emotionless business. "Mommy!" Clara took her hand as they got out of the taxi, her small voice filled with a child's unwavering hope. "Is Daddy going to come visit us now?" "I don't know, my love. I really don't." Gabriel helped carry a still sleeping Elisa inside. As Isabel fumbled for her keys, her hands still trembling, he continued to scroll through his phone, his brow furrowed. "Aunt Isabel, look at this," he said, showing her the screen. A news alert had just popped up. "Scandal at Sterling Corporation. Alleged daughters of CEO appear at gala." "Alleged," Isabel repeated, a bitter, weary anger rising in her throat. Once inside, Isabel gently tucked Elisa into her small bed. Clara refused to change out of her pristine white dress. "I want to keep looking pretty, just in case Daddy comes," she declared, her innocent words another painful twist of the knife. Gabriel sat in their small, cluttered living room, surrounded by the hundreds of crayon drawings the twins had made of their father over the past few months. Richard playing with them, taking them to school, celebrating imaginary birthdays they had never shared. "How did you even think of taking them to the event?" Isabel asked, finally, pouring herself a cup of instant coffee. The cheap, familiar aroma a stark contrast to the expensive champagne she had been offered just hours before. "I saw the invitation online," Gabriel shrugged, his youthful confidence now tinged with a hint of guilt. "I thought if he saw them in person, if he looked into their eyes, he wouldn't be able to deny it." "Well, he denied it very convincingly," Isabel said, her voice flat. "Aunt Isabel, I saw his face when the girls shouted Daddy. He froze. He knows they're his daughters. He's just scared." Isabel sat beside him, observing the colorful, hopeful drawings. "Gabriel, do you remember when you were little, and you used to ask about your own dad?" Yes. Gabriel had lost his father, Isabel's brother, when he was just 5 years old. "But I had pictures with him. Clara and Elisa don't even have that. Not real ones." At that moment, Clara appeared in the living room doorway, clutching a worn photo album. "Mommy, can you tell me again how you met Daddy?" Isabel sighed, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. It was a story she had told dozens of times, a bittersweet fairy tale that always, inevitably, ended the same way, with Richard Sterling vanishing from their lives, leaving behind only a lingering, painful ache. "I worked at a small coffee shop near his university," Isabel began, her voice soft with memory. He used to come in every day at 3 o'clock. Always ordered the same thing. Black Americano and a chocolate donut. And then, Clara prompted, already knowing the story by heart, but needing to hear it again, needing to believe in the magic of that long-ago beginning. One day, it was raining heavily, and I was leaving work. He offered me a ride home in his fancy sports car. Gabriel knew the rest of the story, the secret dates, the stolen moments, because Richard came from a wealthy, powerful family that would never, ever approve of his relationship with a simple, working-class girl. He knew how they had fallen deeply, passionately in love during those 6 wonderful, carefree months. And he knew how it had all ended, abruptly, painfully, after a bitter, devastating fight with Richard's overbearing, controlling family. And why did he leave, Mommy? Clara asked, her voice small, innocent. Isabel looked out the window at the glittering, indifferent city lights, where Richard Sterling lived in his opulent, unreachable world. Because sometimes, my love, she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. People get scared when things become too real. That night, after Clara finally fell asleep, Isabel stayed awake, staring at her phone, the harsh glow illuminating her tired face. The videos of the gala incident had gone viral. The comments were brutal, merciless. Gold digger. Opportunist. How convenient they appear now, just when his company is about to go public. But there were also messages of support, countless messages from single mothers who understood her desperate struggle, from people who saw the undeniable, striking resemblance between Richard Sterling and the beautiful, heartbroken twins. Gabriel approached and sat beside her, his young face etched with a concern that belied his years. Aunt Isabel, do you think we did the right thing? Isabel looked towards the bedroom where her daughters slept, their innocent faces peaceful, yet their young lives now irrevocably, publicly, altered. I don't know, Gabriel, she whispered, her voice raw with a mother's fierce, unwavering love. But there's no turning back now. We told the truth, and now we have to face the consequences. What happens when a public denial collides with undeniable truth, forcing a powerful family to confront a scandal that threatens to shatter their carefully crafted image? Could a desperate father, trapped between legacy and love, find a path towards redemption, or would the sins of the past prove too heavy to bear? I want a DNA test, Richard Sterling declared in front of a throng of television cameras, his voice firm, unwavering, 2 days after the explosive gala scandal. I will not allow my name, my family's legacy, to be tarnished by false, opportunistic accusations. Isabel Morales switched off the television with a sharp, decisive click. Clara and Elisa looked at her from the sofa, their small faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and fear. They were still in their pajamas. They hadn't wanted to go to school. The other children pointed at them, their whispers like tiny, poisoned darts. Their teachers treated them like circus freaks, objects of morbid curiosity. What's a DNA test, Mommy? Elisa asked, her voice trembling slightly. It's an exam that proves if Richard is really your daddy, Isabel explained, trying desperately to keep her voice calm, reassuring. But we already know he's our daddy, right? Clara frowned, her innocent brow furrowed with a child's simple, unwavering logic. Yes, my love, but he wants to be sure. Gabriel Morales, Isabel's nephew, entered the small living room, munching cereal straight from the box, his usual teenage nonchalance a stark contrast to the heavy tension in the room. Aunt Isabel, there are like 20 reporters outside. We can't leave. Isabel peeked through the worn curtains. News vans, their satellite dishes pointed like accusing fingers, blocked the narrow Queen Street. Reporters with microphones and cameras waited impatiently, a pack of hungry wolves sensing blood. Her phone rang. Isabel hesitated for a moment before answering, a familiar dread coiling in her stomach. Mrs. Morales? An elegant, unfamiliar female voice greeted her. This is Cecilia Sterling, Richard's sister. Isabel felt her blood run cold. What do you want? To talk. In person. I have a proposition I believe you'll find advantageous to hear. 2 hours later, Isabel found herself in the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan's Upper East Side, feeling utterly, completely out of place. Her simple blouse and worn skirt a stark contrast to the glittering, opulent surroundings. Cecilia Sterling awaited her at a private table, a woman in her 40s, impeccably dressed, her smile as cold and polished as the diamonds adorning her neck. "Please sit down," Cecilia ordered, more than invited. She didn't waste any time. "I'll be direct, Mrs. Morales. I don't know if those children are my brother's daughters, and frankly, I don't particularly care. What I do care about is protecting our family's name, our reputation." "My daughters have names," Isabel responded firmly, her voice quiet but unwavering. "Clara and Elisa. As I said." Cecilia waved her hand dismissively, a gesture of bored impatience. "Here is my offer. $2 million. You take the money, disappear from New York, from the country if necessary, with your children, and you never ever mention the Sterling name again." Isabel stared at her, speechless. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life, a sum that could change their lives forever. "And if I don't accept?" Cecilia smiled coldly, her eyes like chips of ice. "Then we will destroy you, Mrs. Morales. I have private investigators already looking into your past. Every mistake you've ever made, every unpaid debt, every minor legal issue, everything will be brought to light." "I haven't done anything wrong." "That doesn't matter," Cecilia purred, her voice dangerously soft. "The press can make anything seem scandalous. Do you want your daughters to grow up watching their mother publicly humiliated every single day? Do you want them to carry that shame for the rest of their lives?" Isabel rose slowly from the table, her head held high, her dignity a fragile shield against Cecilia's venomous attack. "I will not sell my daughters, Miss Sterling. Not for any price." "Then prepare for war," Cecilia hissed, her cold smile vanishing, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated malice. That very same night, Isabel received a legal summons. Richard Sterling had hired the best, most ruthless lawyers in the country to handle the paternity test. The exam was scheduled for 3 days later, at a private clinic, away from the prying eyes of the media. The paparazzi, however, were relentless, their flashes blinding, their questions like sharp, poisoned barbs. Isabel arrived with the twins clinging to her hands, their small faces pale with fear. "Mommy, are they going to hurt us?" Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "It's just a swab in your mouth, my love," Isabel reassured her, her own heart pounding. "It doesn't hurt at all." Richard arrived in an armored SUV, surrounded by a phalanx of bodyguards. He didn't look at Isabel or the girls as he strode into the clinic, his face a mask of cold indifference. "Daddy?" Elisa tried to approach him in the sterile waiting room, her small hand outstretched, but Richard completely ignored her, his gaze fixed on some distant, unseen point. "Don't talk to me until we have the results," he muttered, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Isabel felt her heart break as she saw the raw, uncomprehending confusion on her daughter's face. The results arrived a week later. Isabel was at home, trying to shield the girls from the relentless media circus, when the phone rang. "Mrs. Morales?" It was the doctor. "The results are positive. Mr. Sterling is, indeed, the biological father of the twins, with a 99.9% certainty." Isabel sank onto the sofa, a wave of exhaustion, of a strange, hollow relief, washing over her. Gabriel, who had heard the conversation, ran to hug his young cousins. "See, your daddy can't deny it anymore." But when Isabel turned on the television, she realized, with a sickening lurch, that things were far more complicated, far more cruel, than she could have ever imagined. Richard Sterling had called another press conference. "The results confirm I am the biological father," he declared, his voice cold, emotionless, in front of the flashing cameras. "But that does not mean I will assume any emotional or financial responsibility, beyond what the law strictly and minimally requires." Reporters shouted questions, a chaotic cacophony of voices. "Will you meet your daughters, Mr. Sterling?" "I have no interest in forming a relationship with them," Richard responded, his voice chillingly detached. "My lawyer will handle all corresponding legal aspects. This is purely a biological matter, nothing more." Isabel switched off the television, her hands trembling, tears of rage and profound, heartbreaking sorrow streaming down her face. Clara and Elisa had heard everything. "Mommy!" Clara hugged her, her small body shaking with sobs. "Why does Daddy say he doesn't want to meet us?" "I don't know, my love. I don't know. Did we do something wrong?" Elisa asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "No, little one. You are perfect. The problem isn't you. It never was." That night, Gabriel found Isabel weeping in the kitchen, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Aunt Isabel, do you regret what we did?" Isabel looked towards the bedroom where the twins had finally, blessedly, fallen asleep after hours of inconsolable crying. "I don't regret them knowing the truth, Gabriel," she whispered, her voice raw with pain. "But I deeply regret that the truth is hurting them so much." The next day, the newspapers published the results in bold, sensational headlines. Confirmed. Richard Sterling is the father of the twins. But the articles also included scathing statements from Cecilia Sterling, painting Isabel as an opportunistic woman, a gold digger taking advantage of a moment of vulnerability. Isabel knew the battle had only just begun. Richard had acknowledged his biological paternity, yes, but he had also made it brutally, cruelly clear that he would never, ever be a father to their daughters. Gabriel showed her his phone, his young face etched with a protective fury. "Aunt Isabel, look at this. There's a Facebook page called Justice for Clara and Elisa. It already has 50,000 followers." Isabel sighed, a wave of weariness washing over her. Her private life, her daughters' lives, had become a public spectacle, a never-ending circus. And the worst part was, her innocent children were paying the highest, most painful price. "Gabriel," she said finally, her voice filled with a quiet, steely resolve. "I think this is just the beginning, and we will fight. For them." Richard Sterling woke in a cold sweat for the third consecutive night, the same disturbing dream, or rather, fragment of a dream, replaying in his mind. A woman with dark, expressive brown eyes, weeping silently under a relentless downpour, her voice a desperate, unheard scream, trying to tell him something vitally important, something he couldn't quite grasp. He rose and walked to his panoramic penthouse window, the glittering Chicago skyline stretching out beneath him, a cold, indifferent witness to his inner turmoil. "Why can't I remember?" he murmured to himself, a gnawing unease settling deep within him. Ever since the DNA test, unsettling fragments of memories, like elusive ghosts, had begun to appear and disappear, teasing him, tormenting him. A familiar laugh, the scent of cheap coffee and cinnamon, a small, warm hand trustingly entwined with his. His phone rang, a sharp, unwelcome intrusion. It was his assistant. "Mr. Sterling, you have an appointment with Dr. Evans at 10. Richard had, reluctantly, decided to seek psychological help. The persistent memory lapses, the unsettling dreams, were beginning to affect his work, his carefully controlled life. In his opulent office, Dr. Evans, an elderly man with kind, perceptive gray eyes, observed Richard with a patient, understanding gaze. "Richard," he began gently, "memory blocks often occur when we experience intense emotional trauma. Do you remember what exactly happened 8 years ago? Around the time you parted ways with Isabel Morales. There were family problems." Richard shifted uncomfortably in the plush leather armchair, his usual confident demeanor faltering. "My sister and my mother had plans for my future. They wanted me to marry someone from our social class, someone suitable. And you?" Dr. Evans prompted gently. "You had other plans?" For the first time in years, Richard allowed a clear, vivid image to surface in his mind. Isabel, serving coffee with a radiant smile, her eyes sparkling with a warmth that made him feel like the only person in the world. "There was a girl," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. She was different. What happened to her? Dr. Evans inquired, his gaze steady, compassionate. I don't remember clearly, Richard confessed, a genuine confusion in his voice. Everything became hazy. My family strongly opposed the relationship. There were terrible fights. And then she just disappeared from my life. Vanished. Dr. Evans made a few quiet notes. Is it possible, Richard? He asked, his voice carefully neutral, that this girl, this different girl, is the mother of the twins? Richard felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach, a cold dread washing over him. It's possible. Meanwhile, Isabel Morales was reviewing her emails at the public library, a rare moment of quiet solitude in her otherwise chaotic life. Gabriel, her nephew, had taken the twins to the park so they could play without the constant, suffocating presence of reporters and paparazzi. A new message appeared in her inbox. The sender was an old friend, a former colleague from her brief, ill-fated stint at Sterling Corporation 8 years ago. Mrs. Morales, the email read, I worked at Sterling Corporation 8 years ago. I have something that I believe belongs to you, something that might be of great interest. Meet me at the Luna Cafe, 3 p.m. Isabel hesitated. Could be a trap, another cruel attempt by the Sterling family to discredit her, to silence her. But it could also be her only chance to find answers, to uncover the truth. The Luna Cafe was nearly empty when Isabel arrived. A nervous, poorly dressed man in his late 50s waited for her at a table in the back, his eyes darting around the room. Are you Isabel Morales? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. She nodded. I'm Roberto Vasquez. I was an administrative assistant at Sterling Corporation. The man pulled a yellowed, creased envelope from his worn briefcase. This is yours. Isabel opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, there was a handwritten letter. Her own handwriting, dated 7.5 years ago. My dearest Richard, the letter began. I hope this letter finds you well. I have something important to tell you. I'm pregnant. I know things ended badly between us, but I believe you deserve to know. Please call me Isabel. I never sent this letter, Isabel murmured, her voice choked with disbelief, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, you did. Roberto leaned forward, his voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. But it never reached Mr. Sterling. What? Mrs. Cecilia Sterling, Roberto continued, his eyes darting nervously towards the door. Richard's sister. She ordered me to intercept all personal correspondence addressed to her brother. This letter arrived at my desk. Cecilia read it, and then she ordered me to destroy it. Isabel felt the world tilt, her mind reeling. Why? Why would she do that? Because Mrs. Cecilia already had plans for her brother, Roberto explained, his voice barely audible. He was about to get engaged to Juliana Herrera, the daughter of an important, influential family. Your pregnancy, your existence, ruined those carefully laid plans. Why are you telling me this now? Isabel asked, her voice trembling. Roberto sighed, a look of profound weariness in his eyes. Because I was fired last week. They said it was due to cutbacks. But I know it's because I have compromising information. Mrs. Cecilia wants to eliminate all evidence, all loose ends. Isabel carefully put the letter back in the envelope. Are there more letters? This was the only one, but there's something else. Roberto pulled out a small, discreet digital recorder. I recorded conversations between Cecilia and the doctors about Richard's infertility diagnosis. What about it? It's false. Richard Sterling was never infertile. Cecilia paid doctors, influential specialists, to falsify his medical records. Isabel stared at him, speechless, her mind struggling to comprehend the sheer depth of the Sterling family's treachery. Why would she do such a monstrous thing? To control him, Roberto stated simply. If he believed he couldn't have children, he would never question why they didn't arrive. It was the perfect excuse for him to focus solely on the company, on the advantageous, strategic marriages she arranged for him, marriages he always mysteriously managed to sabotage at the last minute. That afternoon, Isabel confronted Richard in his opulent office. She presented herself without an appointment, storming past shocked secretaries and bewildered security guards. "I need to talk to you," she cried, her voice ringing with a newfound, righteous fury, as she finally reached his private sanctuary. Richard looked up from his documents, genuinely surprised by her sudden, unexpected appearance. "How did you get in here?" "Read it." Isabel threw the yellowed letter onto his polished mahogany desk. "Read what you wrote to me 7 years ago." Richard hesitantly picked up the letter. As he read, his face shifted from confusion to utter, profound shock. This can't be real. "Roberto Vasquez delivered it to me today," Isabel stated, her voice trembling but firm. "Your sister intercepted my letter. She knew I was pregnant, Richard, and she hid it from you. She deliberately kept you from your own children." Richard stood abruptly, his chair crashing against the wall. "Cecilia!" His roar of pure, unadulterated rage echoed through the entire office. His sister appeared minutes later, her expression one of cool, feigned composure. "What is it, Richard? Why are you shouting?" He showed her the letter, his hand shaking with fury. "Explain this, Cecilia. Explain it now." Cecilia paled, but quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Richard. That woman is clearly delusional." "Don't lie to me, Cecilia." Richard was furious now, his voice a dangerous growl. "You knew Isabel was pregnant, and you didn't tell me anything. You let me believe. I did what was best for you." Cecilia finally raised her voice, her carefully constructed mask slipping. "That woman wasn't from our class. She would have ruined your life, your career. That decision was mine to make, Cecilia, not yours. You were too young to understand." Cecilia crossed her arms, defiant. "Look where you are now. You're successful, rich, respected. If you had stayed with her, you'd be a failure." Isabel, who had remained silent throughout the heated exchange, finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Richard, there's something else you need to know." She showed him the digital recorder Roberto had given her. "Your infertility diagnosis, it was also a lie, fabricated by Cecilia." Richard's eyes filled with a rage so profound, so devastating, that Isabel had never seen anything like it before. "What?" He pressed play. Cecilia's clear, cold voice filled the opulent office. "Dr. Ramirez already has the false studies ready. Richard will never know he's perfectly fertile." Cecilia tried to grab the recorder, but Richard stopped her, his grip like steel. My whole life has been a lie," he roared, his voice raw with an unimaginable pain. "I did it for your own good." Cecilia began to weep, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. "I had to protect you, protect the family name." Richard looked at Isabel, then at the letter, then back at his sister, his eyes filled with a cold, unyielding fury. "Get out of my office," he said to Cecilia, his voice chillingly calm. "Get out of my company, and don't ever come back." As Cecilia left, sobbing uncontrollably, Richard collapsed into his chair, his body shaking, his world irrevocably, devastatingly, shattered. "Isabel, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." For the very first time in 8 long years, Isabel saw the man she had once loved, the man hidden beneath layers of wealth, power, and familial deceit. "I know," she whispered, her own voice thick with unshed tears. "Now I know." 3 days after the devastating confrontation with Cecilia, Isabel Morales woke to dozens of missed calls on her phone. Gabriel Morales, her nephew, was pacing frantically in their small Queens apartment, his young face pale with alarm. "Aunt Isabel, come see this. It's urgent." On the television, an elegant blonde woman, her face a mask of tearful distress, was giving an exclusive interview. Isabel recognized her immediately. Juliana Herrera, the heiress to a luxury hotel chain, a woman from Richard's own elite social circle. I'm pregnant with Richard's child, Juliana declared, her voice choked with sobs. We've been secretly dating for months. We were going to announce our engagement. But this situation with those other women has complicated everything. The talk show host handed her a tissue, his expression a mixture of feigned sympathy and barely concealed glee. Are you sure Mr. Sterling is the father, Miss Herrera? Completely, Juliana affirmed, tenderly touching her flat stomach. I'm 2 months pregnant. Richard and I are very much in love. Isabel felt her stomach churn, a sickening wave of nausea washing over her. Clara and Elisa, still in their pajamas, appeared in the living room doorway, their innocent faces etched with confusion. Mommy, who's that lady? Elisa asked, her voice small. Why is she saying she's pregnant with Daddy's baby? Clara added, her eyes wide with a child's dawning understanding. I don't know, my loves, Isabel whispered, her mind reeling. Gabriel quickly changed the channel. On another news program, a reporter was interviewing people on the street. What do you think about the alleged daughters of businessman Richard Sterling? Obviously, they're opportunists. A woman responded, her voice dripping with disdain. Now that he has a fiancée from his own social class and a baby on the way, these gold diggers suddenly appear. It's typical, another man added, shaking his head. These women always look for easy money. Isabel switched off the television, her hands trembling, her heart pounding with a renewed sense of dread. She felt publicly humiliated again. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Isabel? It was Richard. His voice sounded strange, confused, almost desperate. I saw the news, Isabel said, her voice cold. Congratulations on your engagement. And the baby. Isabel, this isn't what it looks like. Isn't it? You're not engaged to Juliana Herrera? She's not pregnant with your child. It's complicated, he stammered. I need to see you. Can we talk? I think we've talked enough, Richard, Isabel replied, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. She hung up, refusing to allow him to hurt her daughters again. Meanwhile, in the opulent offices of Sterling Corporation, Richard confronted Juliana in a private, unscheduled meeting. What the hell are you doing? He roared, his voice echoing in the vast, empty boardroom. Juliana, perfectly made up and dressed in a chic pink suit, smiled calmly, a chillingly serene expression on her beautiful face. Saving your reputation, darling. And mine, of course. You're not pregnant. How can you be so sure, Richard? Juliana purred, pulling an ultrasound image from her designer handbag. Here's the proof. Richard snatched the document from her hand. It looked real, undeniably so. This is impossible. Never what, Richard? Juliana stepped closer, her voice dangerously soft. Don't you remember that night, 2 months ago? After the business dinner? You were very drunk. I took you home because you couldn't even stand. You were so insistent. Richard felt a cold void in his memory. Indeed, there had been a dinner with investors. He had drunk far too much. Juliana had taken him home. He remembered nothing of that night. Well, I remember everything, darling. Juliana smiled, a triumphant, predatory glint in her eyes. And now you're going to marry me, Richard, or I will ruin your life completely. What? My father has contacts in every media outlet in the country, Juliana stated, her voice chillingly calm. One word from him, and Isabel Morales will be publicly destroyed. Her daughters, too. Do you want them to grow up watching their mother humiliated every single day? Do you want them to carry that shame? Richard felt the walls closing in on him, a suffocating, terrifying trap. That afternoon, Gabriel, with his uncanny tech savviness, was browsed the internet when he stumbled upon something strange. Aunt Isabel, come here, he called out, his voice urgent. Look at this. On the screen was a photo of Juliana Herrera at a glamorous party, dated just 1 week ago. In the image, she was holding a champagne flute, her laughter unrestrained. Pregnant women don't drink alcohol, Isabel murmured, a flicker of suspicion igniting within her. Wait, there's more. Gabriel continued to search, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Look at this photo from 3 days ago. The image showed Juliana at a spa, entering a sauna. Saunas are dangerous for pregnant women, Isabel said, her voice gaining strength. Any pregnant woman would know that. Gabriel kept digging. He found social media posts of Juliana engaging in intense exercise routines, eating sushi, drinking coffee. Aunt Isabel, Gabriel declared, his eyes shining with triumph. This woman is definitely not pregnant, but she has an ultrasound. Isabel countered, her mind still reeling. Ultrasounds can be faked, Gabriel, a self-taught expert in all things digital, stated confidently. Or it could belong to someone else. Isabel felt a spark of hope, fragile yet persistent. Can you find more evidence, Gabriel? Gabriel set to work like a digital detective, meticulously scouring Juliana's social media accounts, searching for connections, analyzing dates. 2 hours later, he shouted with excitement. I've got it. Aunt Isabel, come see this. On the screen was a WhatsApp conversation between Juliana and someone named Dr. M. Gabriel had, with a skill that both impressed and slightly alarmed Isabel, hacked into Juliana's phone using techniques he'd learned from online tutorials. The messages were devastating, undeniable. Juliana, do you have the fake ultrasound yet? Dr. M. Yes, but it costs an extra 50,000. Juliana, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it looks real. Juliana, are you sure about this? It's illegal. Dr. M. It's the only way to get Richard to marry me. Juliana. Isabel couldn't believe what she was reading. Gabriel. This is evidence of fraud. There's more, Gabriel said, showing her another conversation. This time between Juliana and Cecilia Sterling. Cecilia, is the plan working? Juliana. Perfectly. Richard is confused. And the press already thinks Isabel is an opportunist. Cecilia. Good. Once we're married, we can control everything. Juliana. And the girls. Cecilia. Richard will completely reject them once he marries you. Problem solved. Cecilia. Isabel felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. These women, these cold, calculating monsters, had been planning to destroy her daughters from the very beginning. Gabriel downloaded all the conversations, saving them to multiple devices. What do we do with this, Aunt Isabel? Isabel took her phone and dialed Richard's number, her hand surprisingly steady, her resolve like steel. Richard, I need to see you. Urgently. Isabel, now is not a good time. Juliana and I have to. Juliana is lying to you, Richard. Isabel interrupted, her voice firm, unwavering. She's not pregnant. And I have proof. Silence on the other end of the line. What? Meet me in an hour, Isabel commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. And bring Juliana. It's time she knew we've discovered her despicable game. She hung up and looked at Gabriel, a fierce, protective fire in her eyes. Are you ready to end this, Gabriel? Gabriel smiled, a mirror of his aunt's newfound strength. I was born ready, Aunt Isabel. That night, the truth was finally going to come out. And this time, Isabel Morales was not going to allow anyone to manipulate her family, her life, ever again. What if the intricate web of lies, so carefully spun, was suddenly brutally torn apart, exposing the chilling truth and forcing a desperate confrontation where family loyalties shattered and a long-hidden agenda was finally, irrevocably, unmasked? Could justice, however delayed, finally prevail? Isabel Morales waited in the dimly lit downtown Chicago coffee shop, the laptop containing Gabriel Morales's explosive evidence open before her, its screen a silent, damning testament. Her heart pounded like a war drum against her ribs, a frantic rhythm of anticipation and a steely, unwavering resolve. Richard Sterling arrived first, alone, his face etched with deep, dark circles under his eyes, a haunted look that spoke of sleepless nights and a tormented conscience. He looked utterly, completely defeated. Where's Juliana? Isabel asked, her voice cool, steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging within her. She said she was feeling ill because of the pregnancy, Richard mumbled, sinking heavily into the chair opposite her, his gaze avoiding hers. What proof do you have, Isabel? Isabel turned the laptop screen towards him. The WhatsApp messages, stark and undeniable, appeared one by one. Richard read them in stunned silence, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally, to a raw, incandescent fury. This can't be real, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Gabriel hacked her phone, Isabel stated simply. It's all true, Richard. Every single word. Richard buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. My sister, Juliana. They've been playing me like a fool, like a puppet on a string. Not just you, Richard, Isabel said, her voice softening slightly, a flicker of unexpected sympathy in her eyes. They've been playing with my daughter's lives, with their future. They planned for you to reject them completely. Isabel, I know, she interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. Now I know. But it's too late, isn't it? What do you mean? He asked, his voice filled with a sudden, desperate fear. Isabel took a deep, steadying breath. I'm leaving the country, Richard. With the girls. We're going to Spain. My sister lives there. The girls can have a normal life. Away from the paparazzi. Away from the public humiliation. Away from this. Richard looked at her as if she had just delivered a physical blow. What? No. You can't. I've already bought the tickets, she stated, her voice unwavering. We leave tomorrow morning. She paused, then added, her voice filled with a quiet, profound sadness. And Richard, I've already published all the evidence on social media. In an hour, the entire country will know that Juliana and your sister tried to scam you, to manipulate you. The press is going to go crazy. We don't want to be here when that happens. That very afternoon, as Isabel packed their few meager belongings into 2 worn suitcases, Clara Hayes, her eldest daughter, appeared in her bedroom doorway, clutching an old, battered notebook in her small hands. Mommy, can I take this? It was a notebook filled with crayon drawings Clara had made over the past few months. They were all of Richard. Richard playing with them in the park. Richard taking them to school. Richard celebrating imaginary birthdays they had never shared. Of course, my love. Do you think, Clara asked, her voice small, hesitant, Daddy will ever see my drawings? Isabel knelt in front of her daughter, her heart aching. I don't know, Clara, but they're very beautiful. I'm sure he would like them. Can we leave a copy for Gabriel? Elisa, her younger twin, chimed in, her eyes wide with a child's innocent hope. Just in case Daddy wants to see them someday? Isabel's heart broke. Yes, sweetheart. We can do that. The next day, at the airport, the farewell was decadent. Gabriel hugged his young cousins as if he would never see them again. Take good care of yourselves, okay? He said to the twins, his voice choked with emotion. And don't forget your favorite cousin. You're our only cousin, Gabby. Elisa laughed through her tears. Clara handed Gabriel a carefully wrapped copy of her drawing notebook. This is for Daddy, she whispered. Just in case he ever wants to meet us for real. Gabriel took the notebook with gentle reverence, as if it were a precious, sacred treasure. As they queued to board, Isabel checked her phone one last time. The evidence against Juliana and Cecilia had gone viral. #JulianaFake, #CeciliaLiar were trending nationally. The media was in a frenzy, desperately clamoring for statements. Mrs. Morales, a reporter, somehow managing to bypass airport security, approached her, his microphone thrust forward. Any comment on the Juliana Herrera scandal? Only that the truth always comes to light, Isabel responded, her voice calm, steady. As she walked towards the boarding gate, her daughters clinging tightly to her hands. Just as they were about to board, Gabriel received a frantic call. It was his mother. Aunt Isabel, he shouted into the phone, his voice filled with a desperate urgency. Your father is here. Richard is here. He wants to see you. Isabel felt her heart stop. What? He's crying, Aunt Isabel. He says you can't leave. He has Clara's notebook in his hands. He's looking at all the drawings. And he's weeping like a child. Aunt Isabel, I've never seen a man cry like that before. The twins heard the conversation, their small faces instantly alight with a fragile, desperate hope. Daddy's here, Clara asked, her voice trembling. Isabel looked at the boarding gate, then back at her daughters, her heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions. She could board the plane, give her daughters the peace they so desperately deserved, a life free from scandal and public scrutiny. Or she could stay, risk more pain, more heartbreak, for a chance, just a chance at something real. Gabriel, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What exactly is he doing? He's on his knees, Aunt Isabel. He's begging. He says he can't lose you, he can't lose them. Clara took her mother's hand, her small fingers squeezing tightly. Mommy, she whispered, her eyes pleading. Can we stay? Just to talk to him? Please. Isabel closed her eyes, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. When she opened them again, she had made a decision that would, once again, change everything. Gabriel, she said, her voice surprisingly firm, resolute. Tell him we're coming. They left the airport queue, walking against the tide of departing passengers. Isabel knew with a chilling certainty that she might be making a monumental mistake. But for the very first time in 8 long years, she also felt a flicker of something she thought long dead. Hope. A fragile, terrifying, yet undeniably beautiful hope. What if a father's raw, unvarnished grief, his desperate plea for a second chance, became the unexpected bridge across a chasm of pain and betrayal? Could a family, shattered by lies, truly find its way back to a love that refused to die? During the tense taxi ride back to their modest Queens apartment, the twins, Clara and Elisa Hayes, couldn't stop asking questions. Is Daddy really going to live with us now? Is he going to take us to school? Will he not say any more that we're not his daughters? Slow down, my loves, Isabel Morales said, her voice gentle but firm, trying to manage their innocent excitement, her own heart a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. First, we need to listen to what he has to say. When they arrived at their apartment building, they found Richard Sterling sitting on the steps of their small living room, surrounded by Clara's crayon drawings, which Gabriel Morales, Isabel's nephew, had thoughtfully spread out. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usually impeccable suit now rumpled, and he clutched a specific drawing in his hand, one depicting him and the twins in a park, smiling, a vibrant sun shining above them. As he saw them enter, he immediately stood, his gaze fixed on Isabel, then on the girls. Isabel, he began, his voice hoarse, raw with emotion. Thank you for coming back. I haven't come back, Richard, she clarified, her voice quiet but firm. I just came to listen. Richard knelt in front of Clara and Elisa, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. Girls, my girls, his voice broke. Forgive me. I've been the worst father in the world. Clara approached him timidly, her small hand reaching out to touch his tear-streaked cheek. Are you not going to deny that we're your daughters anymore? Never again, Richard choked out, pulling her into a fierce, desperate hug. You are the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to me, and I was too stupid, too blind, to realize it. For the very first time in 8 long years, Isabel saw the man she had once loved, the vulnerable, passionate man hidden beneath layers of wealth, power, and familial deceit. But she also knew, with a painful clarity, that love alone wasn't enough. Actions, true, consistent actions, mattered far more than tearful words. Richard, she said, her voice gentle but firm, if you truly want to be a part of our lives, you're going to have to prove it. Every single day. I will, he responded, his voice filled with a newfound, desperate determination that Isabel hadn't seen before. I promise you, I will. The family meeting at the Sterling estate felt more like a war tribunal than a business gathering. Richard had summoned the entire family and the Sterling Corporation Board of Directors after the explosive evidence against Juliana and Cecilia went viral. Isabel arrived with the twins and Gabriel, feeling utterly out of place in the immense, opulent mansion, surrounded by gleaming marble and cold, priceless gold. But Richard had insisted she be present. "Everything that happened affects all of us," he had told her. "And I want Clara and Elisa to see how things are rectified when someone does something terribly wrong." In the grand main salon, Cecilia Sterling, Richard's sister, waited, seated rigidly in a leather armchair, impeccably dressed, but with a telltale pallor that betrayed her inner turmoil. Juliana, unsurprisingly, had not appeared. "Where's your fiancé?" Richard asked Cecilia, his voice laced with a cold, cutting sarcasm. "Juliana had a medical emergency," Cecilia responded, her voice firm, unwavering. "She's in the hospital." Gabriel, ever the tech-savvy teenager, immediately pulled out his phone. "Strange," he commented, his voice deceptively casual. "Because an hour ago, she posted photos on Instagram from a spa in Cancun." Richard turned to his sister, his eyes blazing with a controlled fury. "How long are you going to keep lying, Cecilia?" "I'm not lying about anything." Cecilia raised her chin, defiant. "Juliana is truly pregnant." Isabel calmly opened her laptop and connected it to the giant television screen in the salon. "Then explain this, Cecilia," she said, her voice quiet but firm, as she played the damning WhatsApp conversations. The robotic voice of the text-to-speech translator filled the silent room, each word a fresh nail in Cecilia's coffin. "Do you have the fake ultrasound yet?" "Yes, but it costs an extra $50,000. The board members, who had arrived for what they thought was a routine damage control meeting, exchanged shocked, disbelieving glances. Mr. Edward Sterling, Richard and Cecilia's elderly father, turned visibly pale. "Cecilia?" the old man murmured, his voice a hoarse whisper. "What is this?" "It's a manipulation." Cecilia stood abruptly, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. "These people are desperate. They falsified those conversations." Gabriel stood, his own voice ringing with youthful indignation. "Would you like me to call the cyber police to examine Juliana's phone, Miss Sterling?" Cecilia paled further. Isabel continued to play more messages. When she reached the conversation between Cecilia and Juliana, callously planning the twins' public rejection, Clara, Richard's daughter, hugged her mother tightly. "Why doesn't that lady want us, Mommy?" she asked, her voice small, heartbroken. Richard heard the innocent question and turned to his sister, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. "You planned for me to reject my own daughters? Those girls don't belong in our world." Cecilia finally exploded, her voice shrill, hysterical. "Look where they come from. Their mother is a coffee shop waitress. They live in a house smaller than our garage. They are my daughters." Richard roared, his voice thundering through the opulent salon. "They're a mistake." Cecilia shrieked back. "Just like that woman was a mistake in your life." The silence that followed was deafening, absolute. Clara and Elisa hid behind Isabel, their small bodies trembling. Mr. Sterling Sr. approached his daughter, his face etched with a profound disappointment. "Cecilia," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "is it true you intercepted correspondence addressed to your brother?" "Father, I only." "Yes or no, Cecilia?" The old man's voice was unyielding. Cecilia looked around the room, at the shocked, disgusted faces of the board members, at her brother's cold, unforgiving gaze. "Yes," she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But it was for his own good." "And you paid doctors to falsify his medical records?" "The doctors needed money. It was easy." Mr. Sterling Sr. sank heavily into his chair, the weight of his daughter's betrayal, his family's shame, crushing him. "In 60 years of building this company," he said, his voice filled with a profound weariness, "I have never felt so ashamed." One of the board members rose, his expression grim. "Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, this is a scandal that could ruin the company's reputation. We need to take immediate, decisive action." "Cecilia," Mr. Sterling Sr. said, his voice grave, You are hereby removed from all your positions within the company, effective immediately. Father, you can't do this. Not only can I, Cecilia, but I must. You have committed fraud, interception of correspondence, and you have irreparably damaged our family's name. Cecilia looked at Richard, her eyes pleading, desperate. Richard, tell them, I did it for you. What you did was unforgivable. He responded, his voice cold, devoid of emotion. You destroyed 8 years of my daughter's lives, and 8 years of my life too. At that moment, Gabriel received a notification on his phone. Aunt Isabel, he exclaimed. Juliana just uploaded a video to Instagram. He quickly connected his phone to the television. The video showed Juliana on a sun-drenched beach, a margarita in her hand, laughing. Hello everyone, she chirped in the video. I know there's a lot of drama in the news, but I'm perfectly fine. I'm not pregnant. Never was. Cecilia paid me to fake this whole situation, but I got bored with the drama. See ya. The video ended. The silence in the salon was total, absolute. Well, Mr. Sterling Sr. finally said, his voice heavy with resignation. That resolves any lingering doubts. Cecilia collapsed into her armchair, sobbing uncontrollably. I just wanted to protect the family. No, Richard interrupted, his voice firm. You wanted to control my life. There's a very big difference. He turned to Isabel and the twins. Isabel, I can't apologize enough for 8 lost years. But I can promise you that the rest of my life will be different. He knelt in front of Clara and Elisa. Girls, will you forgive me for being so bad to you? Clara approached him timidly. Are you going to be our real daddy now? I'm going to be the best daddy I can possibly be. Every single day. Elisa also approached. And you're not going to say you don't know us anymore? Never again. You are the most important thing in the world to me. Mr. Sterling Sr. approached Isabel. Mrs. Morales, on behalf of my family, I ask for your forgiveness for all the harm we have caused. Isabel nodded, her eyes filled with a quiet grace. What matters now is the future. One of the board members cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, given the circumstances, we believe it would be prudent for you to take some time off from the company to resolve these family matters. Richard stood, his resolve unwavering. Actually, I'm resigning from my position as CEO, effective immediately. Everyone stared at him, stunned. What? Mr. Sterling Sr. gasped. Father? Richard said, his voice firm. All my life, I've put the company before everything else. And look at me. I lost 8 years with my daughters because I prioritized work over family. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. Isabel felt something she hadn't felt in years. Real, genuine hope. Richard looked at his family, at the shattered remnants of their once great legacy. For the first time in my life, he declared, his voice ringing with a newfound conviction, I'm going to do the right thing. And the right thing is to be the father Clara and Elisa deserve. What if the path to true redemption wasn't paved with corporate power or societal approval, but with the quiet, everyday acts of love, patience, and unwavering dedication to the family you almost lost? Could a man, stripped of his empire, finally find his true, most valuable treasure? As they left the opulent Sterling estate that afternoon, Gabriel Morales walked beside the twins. His young face a mixture of relief and a lingering, protective concern. How are you feeling? He asked Clara Hayes, his voice gentle. Confused, she admitted, her small hand instinctively reaching for her mother's. But happy too? It's normal to be confused, sweetie, Isabel Morales said, squeezing her daughter's hand. A lot has happened. Richard Sterling caught up with them, his usual confident stride now replaced by a quieter, more thoughtful pace. Isabel, he began, his voice hesitant. Can we talk? Alone? She nodded, and Gabriel, understanding, led the twins towards the garden to play. I know I can't erase what happened, Richard said, his voice raw with a newfound humility. But I want to try to build something new. Not as a couple, if you're not ready for that, he quickly added. seeing the flicker of apprehension in her eyes. But as parents, as a family, Isabel looked at him, and for the very first time in 8 long years, she saw a genuine sincerity in his eyes, a raw vulnerability that touched something deep within her. "It's going to take time, Richard," she said softly, her voice unwavering. "A lot of time." "I have all the time in the world now," he replied, a ghost of his old, charming smile returning. But this time, it was different, softer, more real. Richard Sterling awoke in his new house, a modest, 2-story building in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Brooklyn. A world away from the 20-room mansions he was accustomed to. It was just 10 minutes from the girls' school. For the first time in years, he hadn't woken up in a vast, empty bed, and for the first time in years, he felt at peace. His phone rang. It was Clara. "Daddy, are you awake yet? You have to take us to school today. Remember?" Richard smiled. It had been 3 weeks since he'd established this new routine, and the girls called him every morning to make sure he didn't forget. "I'm already awake, princess. I'll be over in 30 minutes. He dressed in simple jeans and a plain t-shirt. No more $5,000 suits. No more ties that cost more than many families' monthly salaries. This new version of himself still felt a little strange, a little unfamiliar, but with each passing day, it felt more natural, more him. When he arrived at Isabel's house, the twins were already waiting for him at the door with their backpacks. "Daddy!" Elisa ran to hug him. "Did you see? I did my math homework all by myself." "Let me see." Richard reviewed the notebook, his heart swelling with a pride he had never known before. "It's perfect. How did you learn to do division so well?" "Mommy taught me. She says it's very important to study." Isabel appeared in the doorway, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, a soft, tired smile on her face. "Good morning," she said to Richard, her voice still a little hesitant but warm. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" It was a simple, normal conversation, the kind divorced parents who get along might have. But for them, it represented a miracle, a hard-won truce after years of bitter conflict. In the car on the way to school, Clara asked him the question she asked every day. "Daddy, are you going to pick us up today too?" "Of course I am. Like always." "And are we going to do homework together?" "We're going to do homework together." Elisa leaned forward from the back seat. "And are you going to cook with us?" Richard laughed. Cooking had been his biggest challenge. A man who had dined in the world's finest restaurants his entire life was now learning to make quesadillas without burning them. "I'm going to try not to burn the food again," he promised. The girls giggled. Last week, he had burned the eggs so badly they'd had to order pizza. Arriving at the school, some parents still looked at them with curiosity. The media scandal had been enormous, and although things had calmed down, Richard was still recognizable. "Goodbye, Daddy." Clara gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. "Goodbye, Princess. I love you." "We love you too," Elisa chimed in, watching them walk towards the school building, their small backpacks bobbing. Their bright hair shining in the morning sun filled his chest with an emotion he had never experienced before. Pure, unadulterated paternal pride. Richard drove to his new job, a small consulting firm specializing in family businesses. He earned a fraction of what he used to make at Sterling Corporation, but it gave him the flexibility he needed to be a present, involved father. At 2:30 p.m., he was back at the school, waiting in the line of parents to pick up his daughters. A mother approached him. "Are you Clara and Elisa's dad?" Richard tensed, expecting some negative comment, some judgmental remark. "Yes, I'm their father. I just wanted to tell you they're wonderful girls," the woman said, her smile genuine. "My daughter Sophia adores them, and it's really nice to see a dad so involved." Richard felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Thank you. They're incredible." When the twins came running towards him, Richard hugged them as if he hadn't seen them in years. "How was your day?" "Good." Clara pulled a drawing from her backpack. "Look what I made in art class." It was a drawing of a family, a mom, a dad, and 2 little girls, all holding hands in front of a house. "It's our family," Clara explained. "Do you like it?" Richard felt a lump form in his throat. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. On the way home, they stopped at the supermarket. The twins had convinced Richard to try making homemade cookies. Dad, remember we need flour? Elisa reminded him as they pushed the cart. And chocolate. Don't forget the chocolate, Clara added. Richard watched his daughters debate what kind of chocolate was best and realized that these simple moments, going to the supermarket, helping with homework, cooking together were more valuable than any business meeting or gala dinner he had ever attended. That afternoon, in Isabel's kitchen, the four of them attempted to make cookies. Richard managed not to burn anything, though the cookies ended up a bit misshapen. They're delicious, Isabel said, biting into a cookie that clearly tasted a little strange. You're a terrible liar, Richard laughed. But the effort counts. Isabel smiled. Gabriel, Isabel's nephew, arrived from school and joined the burnt cookie party, as he called it. Uncle Richard, you're getting less terrible at cooking every time, he teased. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Gabby. As the twins played in the living room and Gabriel did his homework, Isabel and Richard washed the dishes together. How are you feeling with all of this? Isabel asked, her voice soft. Different, Richard admitted. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that truly matters. The girls are very happy. And you? How are you feeling? Isabel took a long time to answer. Scared, she finally said. But hopeful too. Scared of what? Of trusting again. Of the girls getting used to having you around, and then you deciding this is too difficult, that you want your old life back. Richard stopped washing the plate he was holding and turned to her. Isabel, I know I have no right to ask you to trust me after everything that happened. But I swear to you, I'm not going to hurt our daughters again. This isn't temporary for me. This is my life now. Isabel looked into his eyes. For the very first time in 8 long years, she saw something she thought she would never see again. The man she had fallen in love with, but improved, mature, real. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. Day by day. That night, when Richard said goodbye to the twins, Clara handed him another drawing. So you don't forget us when you're at your house. The drawing showed Richard smiling, with the words, "The best daddy in the world," written in bright red crayon. Richard drove home with tears in his eyes, the drawing clutched in his hand. For the first time in his life, he knew exactly where he belonged. What if the truest definition of family wasn't found in bloodlines or legal documents, but in the shared laughter, the quiet moments of understanding, and the unwavering commitment to love, forgive, and build a future together, no matter how unconventional, no matter how imperfect. 6 months later, the auditorium of Lincoln Elementary School was filled with nervous parents, their cameras and phones poised. It was the annual presentation on types of families, and Clara and Elisa had been practicing their participation for weeks. Isabel sat in the 3rd row, saving the seat beside her. Richard arrived, rushing, 5 minutes before the event began. His hair slightly disheveled from the Chicago traffic. Did I make it on time? He asked, settling beside her. Just in time, Isabel smiled. They're super nervous. Gabriel sat behind them, his own phone ready to record. My cousins are going to be the best, he declared proudly. On stage, different groups of children had already presented various types of families. Families with divorced parents, adoptive families, families with grandparents as guardians. Each presentation had been sweet and deeply emotional. And now, the teacher announced, Clara and Elisa Morales will talk to us about families that find each other. The twins walked onto the stage hand in hand. Clara wore a blue dress and Elisa a pink one. Both had their hair pulled back in neat pigtails, which Isabel had carefully styled that morning. Hello, Clara said into the microphone, her voice trembling slightly. We're Clara and Elisa, and we want to tell you about our family, Elisa added, her own voice a little shaky. Isabel felt a lump form in her throat. Richard instinctively took her hand. We lived with our mommy for 7 years, Clara continued. And it was very nice, but sometimes we wondered where our daddy was. Our mommy told us our daddy was a good man who lived very far away, Elisa said. But we wanted to meet him. Richard squeezed Isabel's hand. In the audience, some parents whispered, recognizing the girls from the media scandal months ago. One day, we decided to look for him. Clara took a deep breath. Our cousin Gabriel helped us find him. Gabriel straightened in his seat, beaming with pride. When we found him, at first it was very difficult, Elisa admitted. Our daddy was confused. There were mean people who had lied to him for many years. But then, our daddy understood the truth. Clara smiled. And now he comes to take us to school every day. And he cooks with us, Elisa added. Even though sometimes he burns the food. The audience laughed with genuine tenderness. Richard blushed. Our parents don't live together, Clara explained. But they get along well, and they both love us very much. We learned that families can be different, Elisa said, her voice gaining confidence. Some children live with both their parents in the same house. Others live like us. Clara stepped closer to the microphone. But the most important thing we learned is that a family is made of love. And sometimes, Elisa added, her eyes shining, love arrives after birth. Sometimes you have to look for love. Sometimes you have to fight for it. And sometimes, Clara finished, her voice clear and strong, you have to forgive to find it. The silence in the auditorium was complete. Then one mother began to clap. Then another. In seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. A thunderous wave of applause washing over them. Isabel had tears streaming down her cheeks. Richard was also crying, openly, without trying to hide it. Thank you for listening, the twins said in unison, taking a bow. When they came down from the stage, they ran directly to their parents. Richard lifted them both into his arms. You were incredible, he told them. His voice choked with emotion. I'm the proudest dad in the world. Did you like what we said? Clara asked. I loved it, he replied. You told the most beautiful truth I've ever heard. Isabel approached and hugged the three most important people in her life. I love you all so much, she whispered. Gabriel joined the family hug. We're the weirdest but coolest family in the world, he declared. After the presentation, as they walked towards the parking lot, Elisa took Richard's hand. Daddy, are you having dinner with us tonight? If your mommy invites me. Richard looked at Isabel, a hopeful question in his eyes. You're both invited, Isabel smiled. But you're cooking? Can I help? Gabriel asked. To make sure you don't burn anything this time? Richard laughed. A genuine, unburdened sound. Of course. I need all the help I can get. As they got into their respective cars to go home, Isabel watched Richard help the twins with their seatbelts. He did it with a patience and tenderness that, months ago, would have been impossible to imagine. Clara leaned out the window of Richard's car. Mommy, do you think someday Daddy will come live with us? Isabel looked at Richard, who had heard the question. He returned her gaze with a mixture of hope and profound respect for her decision. I don't know, my love, Isabel responded honestly. But what I do know is that we are a family, and that will never change. Richard started his car and followed Isabel home. On the way, he looked in the rearview mirror at his daughters, who were happily singing a song they had learned in school. For the very first time in his life, Richard Sterling knew exactly where he belonged. Not in a luxurious mansion, not in an executive office, not at glamorous gala dinners. He belonged here, driving behind the woman he loved, taking his daughters home, about to attempt to cook dinner without burning it. He belonged to this imperfect, complicated, beautiful family. And finally, after 35 long years of life, he felt complete. What an incredible emotional journey we've just experienced alongside Richard, Isabel, Clara, and Elisa. This story shows us that true love sometimes arrives in the most unexpected ways, and that it's never too late to do the right thing. Doesn't it seem beautiful how these two brave little girls managed to unite a family that fate had torn apart? If this story touched your heart as much as it did ours, don't forget to like this video and share it with that special person who needs to hear that happy endings do exist. Are you hungry for more stories like this? Then subscribe to our channel and activate the bell, so you don't miss any of our upcoming narratives filled with drama, love, and second chances. We love knowing that we have an incredible community of people who love good stories as much as we do. And now we want to get to know you better. Where are you watching us from? Leave us a comment telling us where you're from and what you liked most about Richard and Isabel's story.